"Can you give me a moldy bread?" said the girl, but when the millionaire saw her face, Marcus Harrison never imagined that a simple business meeting would change his life forever. The businessman had built a financial empire over 3 decades, but nothing prepared him for what was about to happen that Monday morning in the small bakery in the Hope Springs neighborhood of Los Angeles. It was when a girl of about 7 approached the counter with hesitant steps, her worn-out clothes contrasting with the cozy atmosphere of the bakery. She looked at the golden loaves displayed in the showcase and asked a question that chilled Marcus's blood. "Can you give me a moldy bread?" asked the child with a sweet voice, but laden with a sadness that shouldn't exist in someone so young. Mrs. Dorothy, the bakery owner, stopped arranging the sweets and looked at the girl with teary eyes. She already knew that situation. It was the 3rd time that week the little one had appeared there, always asking for leftovers that nobody wanted. "Oh, my dear, you don't need to eat moldy bread. I'll give you some fresh rolls," said Mrs. Dorothy, reaching for the bread on the top shelf. "No, ma'am. I can only take what nobody wants." "Aunt Linda said not to beg," replied the girl, lowering her eyes in shame. Marcus, who was sitting at a table in the back of the bakery with his papers spread out, preparing for the meeting with the property owner, felt something strange happen in his chest. He couldn't take his eyes off that child. There was something familiar about her, something that stirred long-buried memories. "What's your name, dear?" asked Mrs. Dorothy, crouching down to be at the girl's level. "Emily," she replied, lifting her face for the first time. It was at that moment that Marcus nearly dropped the coffee cup he was holding. The girl's face hit him like a punch in the stomach. The light green eyes, exactly like his, the shape of her nose, the dimple in her chin that appeared when she spoke, the way she tilted her head slightly to the right when paying attention to someone. It was like looking into a mirror of the past. The businessman felt his hands tremble. It had been 12 years since he had seen his daughter, 12 years since his ex-wife Jennifer disappeared with the child after a devastating argument. He had searched for them for years, hired private investigators, offered rewards. Nothing. It was as if they had vanished from the face of the earth. Now there was a girl who could perfectly be his daughter, asking for a piece of moldy bread in a neighborhood bakery. Marcus's heart was beating so hard he was sure everyone there could hear it. "Emily is a beautiful name," said Mrs. Dorothy, gently stroking the girl's hair. "And where do you live, dear?" "Over on the back street, with Aunt Linda." "She works a lot and sometimes forgets to leave food," explained Emily without showing bitterness, just acceptance of a reality too harsh for her age. Marcus got up from the table, trying to control the emotion threatening to explode. He approached the counter, pretending interest in the displayed products, but actually wanting to observe more closely that girl who could be the answer to 12 years of anguish and search. "You know what, Emily?" said Mrs. Dorothy with a caring smile. "I'm going to make a deal with you. If you want, you can come here every morning and help me organize a few things. In return, you always take a tasty snack home. What do you think?" Emily's eyes sparkled for a moment, but soon the sadness returned. "Aunt Linda won't like it. She said not to bother anyone," murmured the girl. "It's not bothering, dear. It's working. And workers get paid for their work," explained Mrs. Dorothy patiently. Marcus could no longer contain himself. He needed to know more about that child. He approached and, trying to sound casual, asked, "Sorry to intrude, but how long have you lived with your aunt?" Emily looked at him with her big green eyes, and Marcus felt the world stop for a second. "I've always lived with her, since I was a tiny baby. Mommy and Daddy couldn't take care of me," she replied with devastating simplicity. "Do you remember your parents?" asked Marcus, trying to keep his voice steady. "Just a little bit. Sometimes I dream of a tall man in a dark suit who would put me on his lap and sing a little song about birds," said Emily, closing her eyes as if trying to capture a fleeting memory. Marcus's world collapsed. He used to sing exactly that song to his daughter when she was little, a silly little tune about birds that he had made up himself. It couldn't be a coincidence. Mrs. Dorothy noticed the tension in the air and looked at Marcus with curiosity. The businessman was pale, clearly shaken for some reason. "Are you all right, Mr. Marcus?" she asked. Marcus could barely nod. His legs were weak and he had to lean on the counter to keep from falling. "Emily, how old are you?" he managed to ask with difficulty. "8 years old. I'll be 9 next month," she replied cheerfully. The math matched perfectly. His daughter was born in June 2015. Now it was May 2024. She would be exactly 8 years old, turning 9 in June. "What day is your birthday?" asked Marcus, already knowing what the answer would be. "June 15th, said Emily. "Aunt Linda always makes a little cake for me." Marcus had to leave the bakery immediately. He muttered something about coming back later for the meeting and staggered out, leaving Mrs. Dorothy and Emily confused by his reaction. Outside, leaning on his car, Marcus cried for the first time in years. His daughter was alive, but living in conditions that broke his heart. The girl he had searched for tirelessly was there, just a few meters away, asking for leftover food. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep for even a minute. He lay staring at the ceiling of his luxurious apartment on the west side, thinking about his daughter sleeping in a simple house in Hope Springs, perhaps hungry. How had his life gone so wrong? How could Jennifer have abandoned her own daughter? The next day, Marcus returned to the bakery early, hoping to find Emily again. Mrs. Dorothy greeted him with a worried smile. "Mr. Marcus, yesterday you acted very strange when you spoke with Emily. Did something happen?" Marcus hesitated. He didn't know if he should share his suspicions with a stranger, but something about Mrs. Dorothy's motherly manner reassured him. "Mrs. Dorothy, I need to ask you a very serious question. Emily, has she always lived here in the area?" "Well, Mr. Marcus, that girl arrived here about 3 years ago. Linda, who is her aunt, used to be a housekeeper in a big house on the west side. One day she showed up here with the child, said she was going to be responsible for her because the family couldn't take care of her anymore. She rented that small house on the back street and has been there ever since." Marcus's heart raced west side. That was exactly where he lived when Jennifer disappeared with their daughter. "Do you know her aunt's full name?" "Linda Thompson. A good woman, works like crazy to support the household. She cleans at 3 different places, leaves home at 5 in the morning and only comes back at night," Mrs. Dorothy shared. "And about the girl's family? Has Linda ever said anything?" Mrs. Dorothy lowered her voice as if telling a secret. "She said that Emily's parents had financial problems, you know, that they couldn't afford to raise the girl. Linda was always attached to the child and offered to take care of her. But I can see that the situation is tough. The poor thing barely has money to buy food." Marcus felt a mix of anger and sadness. If that was really his daughter, Jennifer had lied to everyone. He never had financial problems. On the contrary, he always offered all the necessary support. The fight between them had been for other reasons. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing, Emily showed up around 10 o'clock just like the day before. This time, Marcus was prepared. He had brought some educational toys and children's books in the car, but he knew he needed to be cautious. He couldn't scare the child or raise unnecessary suspicions. "Good morning, Emily," he greeted when the girl entered the bakery. "Good morning," she replied shyly, heading straight for Mrs. Dorothy. "I came to help you, just like we agreed yesterday." "That's wonderful, my dear. You can start by organizing those candy boxes over there on the shelf," said Mrs. Dorothy, pointing to a simple and safe task. Marcus watched the girl work. Her movements were careful and precise, exactly as he remembered his own little daughter organizing her toys. She had inherited his habit of order and precision. "Emily, do you like school?" Marcus asked casually. "Yes, I do, especially math. Miss Rebecca says I'm good with numbers," she replied proudly. Marcus almost choked on his coffee. Math had been his favorite subject as a child, and he had always been exceptional with numbers. It was a family gift. His father was also good with calculations, just like his grandfather. "That's cool. And do you have many friends at school?" Emily stopped organizing the boxes and lowered her head. "Not many. The other kids sometimes make fun of my clothes, and I can't go to parties because Aunt Linda works and doesn't have money for gifts," she said with a sadness that broke Marcus's heart. At that moment, Marcus made a decision that would change his life. He would uncover the truth, and if that girl was really his daughter, he would do everything to make up for lost time and give her the life she deserved. Over the next few days, Marcus began visiting the bakery religiously. He made up an excuse about being interested in investing in the area and needing to get to know the neighborhood better. Mrs. Dorothy believed the story and even seemed excited about the possibility of improvements in the community. Emily began to get used to his presence. Marcus was patient and kind, always treating her with respect and affection. He noticed small details that confirmed his suspicions, a specific mole on the girl's right arm, just like his daughter had, the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating, her preference for orange juice over soda. A week later, Marcus decided to hire a discreet private investigator. He needed more detailed information about Linda Thompson and how Emily had ended up in her care. The investigator, an experienced man named David Anderson, obtained troubling information within a few days. Linda had indeed worked as a housekeeper in several homes on the West Side. 3 years ago, she had suddenly quit her last job, citing urgent family matters. Around the same time, she appeared in Hope Springs with a 5-year-old child, officially registered as her niece. But the most disturbing part was that Marcus managed to trace the last address where Jennifer had lived after leaving home with her daughter. It was exactly on the same street where Linda had worked as a housekeeper. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in a terrifying way. Jennifer, desperate and without resources, had sought work as a housekeeper. Perhaps she had gotten temporary work in the house where Linda was employed. Something had happened and the child ended up staying with Linda. Marcus needed to find out what had happened to Jennifer. Meanwhile, his relationship with Emily was slowly deepening. The girl had lost her initial shyness and began talking more with him. Marcus discovered she was incredibly smart and curious. She liked asking questions about everything, from how cars worked to why people were different from each other. One day, when they were alone in the bakery while Mrs. Dorothy was at the counter, Emily asked a question that caught Marcus by surprise. "Mr. Marcus, do you have any children?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. How should he answer that question? The truth? A lie to protect the girl? "I had a daughter," he replied carefully, "but it's been a long time since I've seen her." "Did she disappear too?" asked Emily innocently, but the question struck Marcus like an arrow. "What do you mean, disappear too?" "Sometimes I dream about a daddy who disappeared." "And Linda said he left because he didn't want me anymore," explained Emily, idly playing with a napkin. Marcus felt a deep anger growing in his chest. How could anyone say such a thing to a child, especially if it wasn't true? He took a deep breath before answering. "Emily, sometimes adults separate for reasons that children don't understand, but that doesn't mean parents stop loving their children," he said gently. "Do you still love your daughter who disappeared?" "Very much. I think about her every day and hope she's well and happy," replied Marcus with absolute sincerity. Emily looked at him with her piercing green eyes for a long moment. "You're just like the daddy in my dreams," she finally said. Marcus had to get up and go to the bathroom to cry. The emotion was becoming impossible to control. That afternoon, when Emily went home, Marcus decided he needed to speak with Linda Thompson. He couldn't continue in that situation without being sure of what was happening. At 8 in the evening, Marcus parked in front of Linda's small house. It was a simple but well-kept building, with a small garden in front where some colorful flowers grew. When Linda opened the door, Marcus saw a woman of about 40, with tired but kind features. She was wearing a cleaning uniform and seemed to be returning from work. "Good evening. Are you Linda Thompson?" "Yes, I am. Who are you?" she replied, with the natural caution of someone not expecting visitors. "My name is Marcus Harrison. I'd like to talk about Emily." Linda's expression changed immediately. She became tense and suspicious. "What about Emily? Did something happen?" she asked, clearly worried. "May I come in?" "It's a delicate conversation," requested Marcus. Linda hesitated for a moment but eventually opened the door. The house was small but very clean and organized. There were few pieces of furniture, but everything was arranged with care. Marcus noticed some children's drawings stuck on the refrigerator and a small sofa with colorful cushions. "Is Emily not here?" asked Marcus. She's already asleep. She has school early tomorrow, explained Linda, still suspicious. You still haven't told me what you want with my girl. Marcus took a deep breath. It was the moment of truth. Linda, I believe Emily might be my daughter. The silence that followed was deafening. Linda stood still in the middle of the room, looking at Marcus as if he had spoken in a foreign language. Are you crazy? Emily is my niece. I've been raising her since she was little, she finally said. But Marcus noticed a tremor in her voice. I know you're a good person and that you love Emily, but I need to know the truth about how she ended up with you, said Marcus calmly. The truth is that her parents weren't in a position to raise a child. I offered to take care of her, replied Linda, but avoided looking Marcus in the eyes. Linda, I hired a private investigator. I know you worked at the Patterson family's house on Jasmine Street. I know that's where you met Emily's mother, said Marcus gently. Linda collapsed onto the sofa, burying her face in her hands. How did you find out? She whispered. Because Jennifer, Emily's mother, was my ex-wife, and Emily is my daughter, who disappeared 5 years ago, explained Marcus. Linda began to cry silently. Marcus sat beside her on the sofa and waited patiently. I didn't know you were her father, said Linda between sobs. Jennifer came to the Patterson house as a temporary maid. She was desperate, with no money, no place to stay with the girl. The mistress let her sleep in the maid's room with Emily. And then, encouraged Marcus, Jennifer was very sick. She was coughing up blood, losing weight rapidly, but she didn't want to see a doctor because she was afraid of leaving the girl alone, continued Linda. The mistress got worried and sent her to the hospital. Marcus felt a chill. Jennifer had always had respiratory problems, but it had never been serious when they were together. The doctors said she had very severe pneumonia. She had to be hospitalized, Linda went on. Jennifer asked me to take care of Emily while she recovered. She said she had no one else in the world. What happened to her? Asked Marcus, already dreading the answer. Linda cried harder before she could speak. She didn't make it. Her condition was too serious. Before passing, she made me promise I would care for Emily. She said the girl's father was a bad man who had abandoned them both and must never find out where the child was. Marcus felt his world collapse around him. Jennifer had spent her final years hating him so much that she preferred leaving their daughter with a stranger than reaching out to him. And she had lied about him to Linda, painting him as a neglectful and cruel father. Linda, I never abandoned my daughter. Jennifer ran away with her after a fight. I searched for them for years, explained Marcus, his voice choked. But she said she was hurt and angry. Our separation was very difficult, but I always loved my daughter. I always wanted to care for her, Marcus gently interrupted. Linda looked at him with eyes full of doubt and confusion. If what you're saying is true, then I made a terrible mistake. Emily spent all these years without her father, thinking she had been abandoned when in reality, you made no mistake, said Marcus firmly. You saved my daughter. You cared for her with love when she needed it most. I am eternally grateful for that. But now are you going to take her away? Asked Linda, panic in her voice. Marcus realized how much this woman loved Emily. She had sacrificed her own life to care for a child who wasn't even her biological daughter. He couldn't just show up and shatter that family, however unlikely it seemed. Linda, I don't want to take Emily from you. I just want the chance to be her father again. Maybe we can find a way to share this responsibility, suggested Marcus. What do you mean? Well, you could continue to be Emily's primary caregiver. I could help financially and spend time with her, like a close uncle or family friend. Over time, if she feels comfortable, we can tell her the truth about our relationship, explained Marcus. Linda was thoughtful for a long moment. What if she doesn't want to have contact with you? What if she prefers things to stay as they are? Then I will respect her decision. Emily's well-being is what matters most, replied Marcus sincerely. At that moment, they heard light footsteps coming down a wooden staircase that led to the upper floor of the small house. Aunt Linda? Called Emily's sleepy voice. Yes, my dear, you can come down, Linda replied quickly, wiping the tears from her face. Emily appeared in simple pajamas, rubbing her eyes with her small hands. When she saw Marcus, her eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Marcus, what are you doing here?" she asked innocently. Marcus looked at Linda, who nodded slightly, giving him permission to respond. "I came to talk with your aunt about a proposal," Marcus said calmly. "What kind of proposal?" Emily sat down next to Linda on the sofa, clearly curious. "Well, I'd like to help both of you. I've noticed your aunt works very hard and sometimes you face difficulties. Since I'm in a good financial position, I thought about offering some help," Marcus explained carefully. Emily looked at Linda with concern. "Aunt Linda, do we need help?" she asked. Linda smiled and stroked the girl's hair. "Sometimes life is a bit tough, my dear, but Mr. Marcus here offered to be like a godfather to you. Someone who can help when we need it," she explained gently. "Like a real godfather?" asked Emily excitedly. "That's right," confirmed Marcus, feeling his heart warm at the girl's reaction. "But why do you want to help us?" "We barely know each other," asked Emily, with the early wisdom of someone who learned to be wary of others' kindness. Marcus and Linda exchanged quick glances. It was a fair question and hard to answer without revealing the whole truth. "You know, Emily, sometimes people help each other because they feel it's the right thing to do. I have much more than I need, and you two are good people who deserve an easier life," Marcus said sincerely. Emily was thoughtful for a moment, then looked at Linda. "Aunt Linda, if Mr. Marcus becomes my godfather, does that mean he'll come around more often?" "If you want, yes," Linda replied. "I do," said Emily quickly. "I like talking with him at the bakery. He's kind and knows lots of interesting things." Marcus felt tears threatening to escape again. His daughter had just accepted his presence in her life, even without knowing he was her father. From that night on, everyone's routine gradually changed. Marcus began visiting Linda's house a few times a week. He always brought small, useful gifts, school supplies for Emily, cleaning products for the house, food to stock the pantry. Emily quickly adapted to his presence. Marcus was careful not to overwhelm her with excessive attention, but took every opportunity to learn more about her personality and interests. He discovered she loved puzzles, had an exceptional talent for math, and dreamed of becoming a teacher when she grew up. She also enjoyed drawing and creating stories about talking animals. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. During the first months of this new routine, Marcus had to control his anxiety to avoid revealing his true identity prematurely. He wanted Emily to get used to his presence and form genuine emotional bonds before discovering he was her father. Linda, in turn, watched every interaction between them closely. She began to notice obvious similarities. They both had the habit of tapping their fingers when thinking, liked to arrange everything in ascending order by size, and had the same concentrated expression when focused on something. One afternoon, when Marcus was helping Emily with her math homework at the kitchen table, Linda noticed something that moved her deeply. Emily had rested her head on her right hand while calculating, exactly the same way Marcus did when he was focused on his work papers. "Emily," Marcus called softly, "do you have any memories from when you were very little?" The girl stopped writing and looked at him curiously. "A few, why do you ask?" "Just curious." "What can you remember?" Emily closed her eyes as if searching for distant memories. "I remember a big house with a garden that had yellow flowers, and I remember a man who would make me fly in the air as if I were a little bird," she said with a nostalgic smile. Marcus felt his heart race. The garden of the house where they lived had yellow lilies, and he used to play flying with his daughter, lifting her by her arms and spinning around. "Anything else?" "There's a song that sometimes gets stuck in my head about little birds that fly to find their families, but I don't remember where I learned it," Emily continued. Marcus could barely keep his composure. It was exactly the song he had created for her. "What's that song like?" he asked with difficulty. Emily began to hum a familiar melody softly. It was his song, slightly altered by childhood memory, but unmistakably the same. "Little bird flew, 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 looking for the daddy who got lost," she sang gently. Marcus had to get up and go out to the backyard, pretending he needed some air. Linda followed him. "Marcus, are you okay?" she asked worriedly. "That song, I created it for Emily when she was little. The original lyrics were different, but the melody is exactly the same," he explained with a choked voice. "My God," whispered Linda, "she remembers you." "Not consciously, but some part of her holds on to those memories," said Marcus. That night, after Marcus left, Linda lay awake thinking about everything that had happened. She loved Emily as if she were her own daughter, but she was beginning to understand that she was depriving the girl of something important, the chance to know her real father. The next day, Linda decided to talk to Mrs. Dorothy, the only person in the neighborhood she trusted completely. The two had known each other for years, and Mrs. Dorothy had been a sort of counselor during the most difficult times. "Dorothy, I need to tell you something very serious," Linda said when she arrived at the bakery in the morning. "Of course, dear. What's going on?" Linda told the whole story, about Jennifer, about how Emily had come into her life, and about the discovery that Marcus was the girl's real father. Mrs. Dorothy listened to everything in silence, occasionally shaking her head with expressions of surprise and understanding. "Linda, I noticed there was something special between Marcus and Emily from the very first day. The way he looked at her, the attention he gave to every word she said," Mrs. Dorothy commented. "Now it all makes sense. But what if I'm doing the wrong thing? What if he tries to take Emily away from me?" Linda questioned anxiously. "From what you've told me, he doesn't want to take the girl away from you. He wants to share the responsibility, be part of her life. That could be very good for Emily," Mrs. Dorothy observed wisely. "But she might get confused, hurt. She spent years believing her father abandoned her," argued Linda. "Children are more resilient than we think, and at her age, she can gradually understand that sometimes adults make mistakes without meaning to hurt anyone," said Mrs. Dorothy. That afternoon, when Marcus arrived for his usual visit, Linda decided to bring up the subject. "Marcus, we need to talk about telling the truth to Emily," she said, as soon as the girl went up to her room to do her homework. "Do you think it's time?" he asked nervously. "I think she has the right to know, and you have the right to be recognized as her father. But we need to do this very carefully," explained Linda. "How do you suggest we do it?" "How about starting by telling her about her mother? She always asks about Jennifer. We can explain that her mother got sick, and that before that, she lived with her father," suggested Linda. "And then?" "Then we can explain that you looked for her for a long time and that now you found her," Linda finished. Marcus agreed it was a sensible plan. They decided to have this conversation over the weekend, when they would have more time and privacy. On Saturday morning, Marcus arrived at Linda's house with a photo album he had prepared especially for that moment. There were pictures of when Emily was a baby and a little girl, living with him and Jennifer. "Emily," Linda called when the girl finished breakfast, "Marcus brought some photos to show you. They're very special." "What kind of photos?" asked Emily curiously, sitting between Linda and Marcus on the couch. Marcus opened the album to the first page, which showed a picture of Emily as a newborn in the hospital. "This is you when you were a tiny baby," he said softly. Emily's eyes widened. "Wow, I was so small. Who took this picture?" "Your daddy," Marcus replied calmly. Emily looked at the photo and then at Marcus. "My daddy? But where is he now?" Marcus took a deep breath. "Emily, your daddy is right here. It's me." The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Emily looked back and forth between Marcus and Linda, trying to process the information. "You're my daddy? My real daddy?" she asked in a small voice. "Yes, my daughter." "I am," confirmed Marcus with tears in his eyes. "But Aunt Linda said you had gone away because you didn't want me anymore," said Emily, confused. Linda hurried to explain. "Emily, sweetie, I was mistaken. I didn't know Marcus was your father. Your mother had told me a different story because she was very sad and confused," Linda explained gently. "And where is my mother?" asked Emily. Marcus and Linda exchanged glances. It was the hardest moment. "Your mother got very sick, honey. She couldn't stay with us. But before she left, she asked Aunt Linda to take care of you with lots of love," Marcus explained delicately. Emily was quiet for a long moment, absorbing all the information. "So you didn't abandon me?" she finally asked. Never, my daughter. I looked for you for years. Every day I thought about you and wanted to find you, Marcus said emotionally. And now that you've found me, will you stay with me? If you want, yes, but you can also keep living here with Aunt Linda. She takes very good care of you, said Marcus. Emily looked at Linda with concern. Aunt Linda, if he's my daddy, can I still live with you? Of course you can, my dear. We're a family now, all together, Linda replied with a loving smile. Like a different kind of family? Asked Emily. That's right. A family where you have your daddy and your Aunt Linda taking care of you, explained Marcus. Emily seemed to consider this possibility for a few minutes. Can I call you Daddy? She asked timidly. Of course you can. I'd love that, said Marcus, finally letting the tears flow freely. Emily got up from the couch and moved closer to Marcus, who wrapped her in a hug that lasted an eternity. It was the hug he had dreamed of giving for years. I knew you would come back, whispered Emily in his ear. I dreamed that you would find me. At that moment, Marcus understood that every moment of pain, every year of searching, every tear shed had been worth it. His daughter was back in his arms, and this time he would never let her go. The following months were a period of adjustment for everyone. Marcus moved to an apartment near Linda's house so he could be present in Emily's daily life without interfering with the routine she had already established. The girl adapted surprisingly well to her new reality. She continued to call Linda Aunt, but now she also had her daddy present in her life. Marcus attended school meetings, took Emily on weekend outings, and helped her with homework in the evenings. The family's financial situation improved drastically. Linda was able to reduce her workload and dedicate more time to Emily. The house was renovated, gaining a larger room for the girl and improvements in the kitchen and bathroom. Emily flourished with the emotional and financial stability. Her grades at school improved even more, she made new friends, and her self-esteem grew visibly. The shy girl who used to ask for moldy bread had transformed into a confident and happy child. Mrs. Dorothy watched this entire transformation from her bakery, which had become the family's official meeting spot. Marcus, Linda, and Emily had breakfast there every Saturday, and the girl helped organize the products as she always did. One day, 6 months after the truth was revealed, Emily asked a question that caught Marcus by surprise. "Daddy, why did you and Mommy fight?" she asked while they were doing a puzzle on the living room floor. Marcus stopped searching for pieces and looked at his daughter. It was a question he knew would come eventually. "Sweetheart, sometimes adults have trouble talking properly. Your mother and I disagreed about some important things, and instead of talking calmly, we ended up fighting," he explained honestly. "Did you fight because of me?" Emily asked with concern. "No, my dear, it was never because of you. You were always the most important thing to both of us. We fought because we were young and didn't know how to solve our problems in a better way," Marcus clarified. "And if you had talked properly, would I have grown up with you?" "Probably, yes, but you know what I learned from all this?" Marcus said, pulling Emily closer to him. "What?" "That sometimes things happen differently than we planned, but that doesn't mean it's bad. If I hadn't lost you for a while, I would never have met Aunt Linda, who took care of you with so much love, and you would never have met Mrs. Dorothy and all the friends at the bakery." Emily thought about that for a moment. "It's like we took a longer path to get to the same place," she asked wisely. "Exactly that, my smart girl," Marcus said, kissing the top of her head. During this period, Marcus also had to deal with legal matters to formalize his paternity. With the help of competent lawyers, he managed to regularize all the documents, ensuring that Emily had access to her rights as a daughter and that Linda maintained her legal position as guardian. The process was time-consuming but necessary. Marcus wanted everything to be done correctly, without leaving any loose ends that could cause problems in the future. At the same time, he started setting up an educational fund for Emily, ensuring she would have resources to study whatever she wanted when she reached college age. He also hired a premium health insurance plan for her and Linda, ensuring they would never face medical difficulties again. During this period, Marcus discovered more details about Jennifer's final years through Linda. Apparently, his ex-wife had developed severe depression after leaving the home, worsened by financial problems and the difficulty of raising a child alone. She had worked in unstable jobs, frequently moving from city to city to avoid being found. The respiratory illness that took her had started as a simple cold, but her resistance was low due to stress and poor nutrition. Marcus felt a deep sadness upon learning of Jennifer's suffering. Despite all the problems between them, she had been the mother of his daughter and didn't deserve to have gone through so many hardships. "Linda," he said one day, "do you think Jennifer ever regretted running away with me?" In her final days, when she was hospitalized, "She talked a lot about you," Linda replied thoughtfully. "She said she might have made a wrong decision, but had too much pride to admit it. I think she knew you were a good father." These words brought a mix of relief and sadness to Marcus. It was painful to know that Jennifer had suffered so much, but comforting to understand that she had recognized her own mistakes before passing. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. 1 year after the reunion, the family's life had stabilized into a new, happy routine. Marcus had sold his company to a multinational corporation, securing his financial independence and allowing him to devote more time to his family. He and Linda had become partners in raising Emily, each contributing their experiences and perspectives. Linda brought the practicality and simplicity of someone who knew life's difficulties, while Marcus offered educational and cultural opportunities that broadened the girl's horizons. Emily, who was now 9 years old, was excelling in school not only in math, but also in writing and science. She had inherited her father's intelligence and her mother's sensitivity, combined with the strength of character she developed during the difficult years. The girl also demonstrated surprising emotional maturity for her age. She often served as a mediator when Marcus and Linda had different opinions about her education, always with balanced and sensible suggestions. One Sunday afternoon, while the three of them were preparing lunch together in the renovated kitchen, Emily made a comment that deeply touched Marcus's heart. "Daddy, you know what I like most about our family?" "What, sweetie?" "That everyone here chose to be together. Aunt Linda chose me when I was little and needed care. You chose me when you found me again, and I chose both of you too," she said simply. Marcus and Linda looked at each other over Emily's head, both moved by the girl's wisdom. "That's very beautiful, Emily. And you're right. The best families are those who choose each other out of love," said Marcus. "Exactly," Linda agreed. "And our family is perfect just the way it is." In that moment, while the three of them cooked together in the golden afternoon light, Marcus realized he had found something he never knew he was looking for. Not just his lost daughter, but a true family, brought together by unlikely circumstances, but kept together by genuine love. The years that followed brought typical teenage challenges, but the solid foundation built during the adjustment period allowed the family to face everything together. Emily grew up maintaining a balance between two worlds, the simplicity and solid values learned from Linda, and the opportunities and ambitions encouraged by Marcus. At 15, Emily decided she wanted to study medicine. She had discovered her vocation during a visit to the hospital where Jennifer had spent her final days. Seeing doctors and nurses dedicating their lives to caring for others inspired her deeply. Marcus fully supported her decision, arranging the best preparatory courses and learning opportunities. Linda, in turn, made sure the girl kept her feet on the ground and didn't forget her humble origins. During her senior year of high school, Emily started a social project in the Hope Springs community. Together with Mrs. Dorothy, she organized a literacy program for adults that operated in the back of the bakery. The project caught the attention of the local media, and Emily gave her first interview to a newspaper. When asked about her motivation for social work, she replied, "I learned that when we receive a lot of love and opportunities, we have a responsibility to share that with others. My family taught me that it doesn't matter where you come from, but where you're going and how you can help along the way." The interview moved Marcus and Linda, who saw in those words the reflection of the values they had worked to instill. When Emily turned 18, Marcus organized a special party at Mrs. Dorothy's bakery. It was the place where everything had begun, and he wanted to celebrate not only his daughter's birthday, but also the extraordinary journey that had brought them there. During the party, Marcus gave a speech that summarized his feelings. 18 years ago, the girl who would change my life forever was born. 9 years ago, I found her again in a bakery, disguised as a child asking for stale bread. Today, she has become an extraordinary young woman who chose to dedicate her life to caring for others. Emily, you not only found your way back to me, but you taught me the true meaning of family, forgiveness, and unconditional love. Linda also spoke at the party. When Jennifer asked me to take care of Emily, I thought I was doing a favor for a desperate mother. I didn't know I was actually receiving the greatest gift of my life. Emily taught me how to be a mother, gave me purpose, and brought me a family I never imagined having. And Marcus, you showed me that there are honorable men in this world who keep their promises and love without measure. Emily, moved, thanked everyone. I could have had a very different life if it weren't for your love. Aunt Linda taught me that true wealth lies in the relationships we build. My father taught me that we should never give up on the people we love. And all of you taught me that family isn't defined just by blood, but by choice, dedication, and love. The party lasted into the early hours, with stories being told and memories shared. The small bakery was filled with neighbors, Emily's school friends, and all the people who had been part of this incredible journey. At the end of the night, when only Marcus, Linda, and Emily remained in the bakery, they sat at the same table where Marcus had worked on that first day, 9 years earlier. "Do you know what my favorite memory is from this whole story?" asked Emily. "What?" asked Marcus and Linda simultaneously. "The moment you hugged me for the first time after discovering you were my father. I felt like a missing piece of me had finally returned to the right place," she said. Marcus felt tears in his eyes again. "And do you know what mine is?" he said. "Tell us," encouraged Linda. "The moment you, Linda, decided to trust me and give me the chance to be Emily's father again. You could have pushed me out of your lives, but you chose forgiveness and generosity." "And my favorite memory," said Linda, "is the first day you two played together in our backyard. Seeing Emily running and laughing, without that sad look she always had, made me understand we had made the right decision." They stayed there for a while longer, sharing memories and making plans for the future. Emily would start medical school the following semester. Marcus had decided to create a foundation dedicated to reuniting families, separated by difficult circumstances. Linda had plans to expand the literacy program to other neighborhoods. When they finally stood up to leave, Marcus took one last look at the counter where he had seen Emily for the first time after so many years. "You know, my daughter," he said, "I will always be grateful for that moment when you asked for a moldy bread. That's when our real story began." "Dad," said Emily, smiling, "I will never need to ask for moldy bread again. Now I have you both to always give me the best." And so, in the small bakery of Hope Springs, a story that began with tears ended with smiles. A family that had been torn apart by misunderstandings and pride was rebuilt through love, patience, and the courage to forgive. Years later, when Emily became a respected doctor, she would always tell her patients that the most powerful cure she knew was not in any medicine or procedure, but in the human ability to love unconditionally and never give up on the people who matter. Mrs. Dorothy's bakery became famous in the area, not just for its delicious bread, but for the story of hope and reunion that had taken place within its walls. Mrs. Dorothy always told customers that it was a place where miracles happened every day, disguised as small acts of kindness. Marcus, who had found much more than a lost daughter, learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what truly matters in life. His company had been sold, his life had completely changed, but he had gained a united family and a purpose that went far beyond financial success. Linda, who had started as a simple housekeeper with a generous heart, became the center of a family she never imagined having. Her courage in caring for a child who was not biologically hers, and her wisdom in navigating a complex situation, showed that true heroism sometimes lies in the simplest, everyday actions. And Emily, who had started as a lost girl asking for moldy bread, grew up to become a woman who dedicated her life to caring for others and spreading the love she had received. She carried with her the lessons from both parents, the perseverance of Marcus, and the generosity of Linda. Many years later, when Emily had her own children, She would always take them to Mrs. Dorothy's bakery to tell the story of how a family can form in the most unexpected ways. And every time they passed by people in need on the street, she would stop to help, remembering that once she too had needed the kindness of strangers. The small bakery in Hope Springs continued to be a meeting point for the family, even when everyone had grown up and followed their own paths. Every Sunday, without exception, Marcus, Linda, and Emily would gather there to have breakfast together, keeping alive the tradition that had started on that first difficult day. Mrs. Dorothy, even in her old age, continued to work at the bakery, now helped by her children and grandchildren. She always said that she had had the privilege of witnessing one of the most beautiful stories of family love that ever existed, and that it gave meaning to her entire life of work and dedication. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this moving story and where you are watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Marcus made the right decision to accept sharing parenthood with Linda? We would love to read your opinion. Thank you very much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other heartwarming stories.